Can pregnant women also be charged with some kind of illegal distribution charge when smoking tobacco too? Or is that too inconsistently protected in the name of the unborn isn't human yet propaganda? So, while many innocent Americans are being prosecuted for these types of things and are having their private property abolished, as the Communist Manifesto stated is one of their goals, despite how the Constitution and its framers were concerned about this issue, as Madison wrote in The Federalist, to secure the public good and private rights. Despite this, the police, courts, and government agencies that continue to rob the common person of their cash, properties, and assets then turn around to then seem to turn a blind eye or don't go after and investigate in detail all the alleged drug smuggling and dealings of high-up government officials like the Clintons and Bush barons. Instead, the Clintons and Bush drug barons continue to get away with alleged murders to cover up their narco-terrorism, drug transporting, and distribution through the Mina airport, their opium deals out of Burma and South and Central American drug plantations during Air America ongoing operations. The DEA and police don't seem to be willing or able to have the guts to go after the real alleged drug barons in different government positions, especially the very high up one. Why? Instead, they go after different ones assigned to investigate, report, or have knowledge of activities and could pose a threat to their climb to higher government positions, like in the case with the law enforcement agencies assigned to investigate Mina, Whitewater, and other alleged illegal activities of the Clinton, like in the case of the documentary The Clinton Chronicle. Plus, they go after such investigators as the highly decorated Vietnam vets like Bogritz, who attempted to expose Bush's disinterest in evidence of drug running out of Burma. As the Clinton Chronicles and Bogritz show and allege, the top cops at the top, who are supposed to be in charge of dealing with the so-called drug war, are part of the problem. They're part of it in a major way.
On December 7th, 1987, the John Birch Society exposed this story. Colonel Gritz has written a letter again to the United States Vice President Bush. To my knowledge, Bush refuses to answer the letter. He refuses to see Gritz, a man with that impeccable reputation. Burma is in the Golden Triangle, largest source of opium in the world. There's a general there with an army. 900 tons of opium will pass through there this year. Most of that will be refined into heroin and passed illegally into the Western world. It will be the most important single source of the United States. It's not surprising, therefore, to know that the United States government, through its Drug Enforcement Agency, has launched a massive program to eliminate this flow of narcotics. It has spent millions and millions of dollars in Southeast Asia to eradicate these projects. Much of this money has been given to the socialist dictatorship of Burma, $11 million last year alone. And this is especially ironic because it's well known that Burmese officers, army officers, and government officials themselves are deeply involved in the trade. Americans are involved, high political Americans. And I want to read the letter that Bush received from Bo Gritz. The letter reads as follows, and I'm quoting. I turned over videotapes to your NCS Staff Assistant Tom Harvey, January of 1987, wherein General Kun Sa, overlord of Asia's Golden Triangle, offered to stop 900 tons of heroin and opium from entering the free world last year. And Harvey told me there is no interest here in doing that. General Kun Sa also offered to identify U.S. government officials who he says has been trafficking in this dope for more than 20 years. November 1986, Scott Weekly and I went into Burma in coordination and cooperation with the White House. Vice President Bush has been put in charge of all this activity, this anti-dope stuff. That's why the letter's going to him. He has videotapes that he turned over to the Vice President. November 1986, Scott Weekly and I went into Burma in coordination and cooperation with the White House. Kun Sa offered to trade his nation's poppy dependence for a legitimate economy, 900 tons of poppies. Instead of receiving an attaboy for bringing back videotape showing Kun Kumsaw's offer to stop 900 tons of illegal narcotics and expose the dirty USG officials. Scott was jailed and I was threatened. I was told that if I didn't ease and forget all that we had discovered, I would, quote, hurt the government. Therefore, I was promised a prison sentence of 15 years. I returned to Burma with two other American witnesses, Lance Primer, a private detective from San Francisco, and Barry Flynn from Boston. General Kumsaw identified some of those in government service, he says, who were dealing in heroin and arms sales. We did videotape the second interview, and I turned copies over in June of 1987 to the chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Task Committee on Narcotics Control, the co-chairman of the Senate Narcotics Committee, Senator Harry Reid of New York, Senator Harry Reid and also Representative James Bilbrey, and other congressional members. Mr. Richard Armitage, Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, is one of those USG officials implicated by Kumsaw. Nothing was done with this evidence that indicated that anyone of authority, including myself, had intended to do anything more than to protect Mr. Armitage. I was charged with misuse of passports. Seems it's all right for Oliver North and Robert McFarlane to go into Iran on Irish passports to negotiate an illegal arms deal that neither you nor anyone else admits condoning, but I can't use a passport that brings back drug information against your friends. Lance Trimmer and I submitted a citizen's complaint of wrongdoing by federal officers to Attorney General Edward Meese on September 17th of 1987. Continuous private and legislative inquiries to date indicate that the Attorney General's office has lost the document. Congressional requests to the Government Accounting Office have resulted in additional government snarls and stalls. January 20th, 1988, I talked before your breakfast club, the River Oaks Country Club in Houston. A distinguished group of approximately 125 associates of yours, including the Chief Justice of the Texas Supreme Court, expressed assurances that you're a righteous man. Almost all of them raised their hands when I asked how many of them you knew personally. If you're a man with good intent, I pray that you will do more than respond to this letter. I ask that you seriously look into the possibility that political appointees close to you are guilty of bypassing our congressional process and for purposes of promoting illegal covert operations conspired in the trafficking of narcotics and arms. Please answer why a respected American citizen like Mr. H. Ross Parrott can bring you a pile of evidence of wrongdoing by Hermitage and others, and you, according to Time magazine, May 4th, page 18th, 87, not only offer him no support, but you have your Secretary of Defense, Frank Colucci, tell Mr. Parrott to stop pursuing Mr. Armitage. Well, sir, you will not look into affidavits gathered by the Christic Institute in Washington, which testify that Armitage not only trafficked in heroin, but did so under the guise of an officer charged with bringing home our prisoners of war. If these charges are true, Armitage, who is still responsible for prisoner of war recovery as your Assistant Secretary of Defense USA, has every reason not to want these heroes returned to us alive. Clearly, follow-up investigation would eliminate collective crimes of Armitage and others. General Kumsaw in his jungle headquarters named Richard Armitage as the key connection in a ring of heroin trafficking mobsters and USG officials. A U.S. agent I have known for many years stopped by my home last month en route to his next overseas assignment. He remarked that he had worked for those CIA chiefs named by Kumsaw, and that by his own personal knowledge he knew what Kumsaw said was true. If you have any love or loyalty in your heart for this nation, if you have not completely sold out, then do something positive to determine the truth of these most serious allegations. You were director of the CIA in 1975, during the time Kumsaw says Armitage and CIA officials were trafficking heroin. As director of intelligence, you were responsible to the American people for the activities of your assistants, even if you should know what some of these same people are doing who are close to you now as our vice president. I oppose your bid for president because I feel these parallel government types will only be promoted by you, giving them even more reason to bury our prisoners of war. I am enclosing some documentation that supports the charges made. Chief is a letter from Kun Saw to the U.S. Justice Department dated June 28, 1987, wherein Richard Armitage is named along with Theodore Shackley, your former Deputy Director CIA for Covert Operations, and others. Please also note William Stevenson's article in the Toronto Sun entitled Bank of Intrigue Circles of Power on the 13th of August 1987. Also Tom Fitzpatrick's article, New Times, Tempe, Arizona, November 11 and 17, 1987. From Burma to Bush, a heroin train.